It's a video.
Okay.
Hey guys, it's Becca here with my husband, Mike.
Hey.
We're here to talk about chapter 4, which is a chapter about marriage. And the idea was kind of sprung from the cliche about home is where the heart is. And I was thinking about how a lot of times our heart is with another person, especially in marriage. And in theory, marriage should be this really stable, reliable place. And the commitment can be sure, but sometimes the relationship doesn't feel as unshakable as you want it to. And so this chapter was exploring that idea about if home is where the heart is and the person you love most isn't accessible, or if your relationship is going through a strain, what do we do then? And what can we learn about home when even our most crucial relationships are going through a hard time? So this is Mike. He's going to speak a little bit to what the chapter is about and how we've kind of processed this idea together.
Yeah, I thought I loved how the chapter opened, just kind of talking about how we ended up in Yuma in that first year that we were married. We just had so many, I guess you used the word concentric circles or overlapping, places in life with work, with exercise, with free time. We just spent a lot of time together, and that really allowed for you say kind of an easy first year of marriage. And I know it's not always the case for everybody, but for us, it just kind of happened that way. And I think it was kind of this, maybe lulled us into this false sense of security that, oh man, this is so easy, like we got this. And then like you kind of transition in the next couple paragraphs in the book. After that first year, I was gone for about 15 months. And I feel like we saw the other side of the pendulum, the other side of that coin where life didn't overlap as much. And it led to a lot of, maybe tension or just times where we just like missed. And I think we were really well intentioned and we're trying. And you talk about that, but it didn't always line up. And so it led to some conflict and some just separation that I think maybe was a little unexpected, kind of a surprise almost.
Yeah, and I think that's what was so frustrating is that I knew Mike was trying and I knew I was trying and it just didn't feel good enough. It wasn't getting us to the level of like cohesiveness in our relationship that we both longed for. And I talk about those phone calls home, how it was such a picture of good intention, but coming up short, that we didn't feel connected, and yet we were trying to be. And I wrote this paragraph. I remember when I was writing it, I was sobbing because I was reliving this frustration and the angst of wanting to value a relationship and put everything into it, and yet what do you do when it's not returning the same richness that you want it to? And so this is referencing that period of deployment, that second year. And it says, if I'm honest with you, during this time, I felt helpless and lonely and emotionally abandoned. I wonder if this temporary estrangement would cling to us like a disease, if it would become permanent, chronic, terminal, if it would ruin everything. Our grip on each other was slipping, and I wasn't at all sure that things would ever be the same. I wondered, worried, that if a combat deployment didn't cost the life of my husband, it might very well cost the life of my marriage. And my most desperate prayer to God was that he would somehow preserve our unity, that he would step in as the stability between us. Because if home is where the heart is, our hearts had to be entrusted to a better, more permanent place than each other. And I wonder if, Mike, you could speak to what you do when you come to these crossroads in marriage where it's harder than you expect it to be.
Yeah, and I guess let me jump back to the beginning of that paragraph because I think you're writing it from your perspective, but I think I felt the same things while I was deployed. And you wanted me to be invested in your life and I wanted you to be invested in what I was doing, but there was just this barrier. You couldn't, I probably didn't do a good job sharing enough, but I feel like you also didn't want to experience the same things I was experiencing. Right. And at the same time, I couldn't or just didn't engage as much as I probably should have in your day-to-day life. And so it started to kind of create that divide like you talk about. And I love the way you end that paragraph about a better, more permanent place than each other. And I think it's just a reminder that as we kind of go through marriage, that it's this like reflection and image of Christ's love for the church and for us. And so I always go back to Ephesians, where Paul talks about just the idea of submitting to each other and loving each other. And it's in Ephesians 5, it's such a challenging chapter, I think, especially for me, because he spends the majority of that section talking to husbands, and he says, husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church. And it's really like a selfless, self-sacrificing type of love. And so it's just challenging in those times where you don't feel connected, you don't feel engaged, to almost make it like a discipline of love. Right. When it's not easy, but you're still pressing into it. And I think we've talked about this a lot, like the whole like marriage isn't 50-50, and I don't know, it's probably like a big cliche, but that it really is like each of us trying to give 100% and like outgive each other in terms of the relationship. And I think that's something that we started to learn then, and that we've continued to learn. And like every time I think that like, hey, we got this, like again, I'm reminded of how selfish I am and how it's so natural for me to focus on myself instead of on you.
I don't know. I naturally like super selfless.
You've got it mastered.
Yeah, it's really easy for me.
I think it's just, even just reading something like this chapter, or Tim Keller's book, or just having conversations with other married couples, and reminding each other and challenging each other to act that way towards each other. That and you kind of get into it later in the chapter about this idea of covenant versus consumer relationship. And I think you pulled that from Tim Keller. But again, it's one of my, I think, favorite examples, and it's, I think, really easy to be a consumer in a lot of ways. Like maybe it's just our culture, but I think maybe it's just our nature. And it's hard in marriage to like make that shift of your mind from consumer to covenant, where it doesn't matter whether you're loving me well or I'm loving you well, but that I took a vow, I took a covenant to love you well and to honor you and to support and cherish you. So. Right.
And not using each other as the example of the best sort of love. Yeah. Like I talk about how Christ, or I guess maybe I don't say this exclusively. Oh, hey, there's a plate of bread. But that we need Christ as our model of love, because if I look to Mike as the ultimate standard of love, then I'll only be compelled to love as well as he does and to echo his best attempts, which in the end are human. And so Christ loves us faithfully and sacrificially and pursues us endlessly 100% of the time. And if that is our standard, that raises the bar for both of us. So we're not striving to just echo each other's best attempts. We're striving, like with the Holy Spirit within us, to model the love that we've been shown by God.
Yeah, and I think, in this chapter, obviously you talk about our experience and while I was deployed and kind of doing all that training. But I feel like there's so many just maybe universal or like good lessons out of this, that it's not like, I don't know, if you're not in the military or in a military family, it doesn't mean this doesn't apply to you. I think I can think of plenty of other examples in our own marriage where it had nothing to do with the military, when we just were missing each other. Like times of transition and
parenting.
Parenting. You name it. Like any challenge, I think, any time where you're not comfortable, I think it just is a struggle to maintain that selfless love, and it's easy to shift back to that consumer mindset. And so, I really think I love this chapter because I feel like it's so applicable to anyone,
And I think that our takeaway is that we're also thankful for the model of Christ's love for us, because that will be a lesson that we never stop learning, I think, for all of our days.
Sure.
It's how to be steadfast.
Yeah. All right. Bye, guys.